Hello out there. We're on the air. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, YouTube. Good morning, zap.stream. You'll be happy to know that I actually remembered to send out a post to Nostr today. So shout out to Nostr, shout out to zap.stream. We're going to be buzzing there in just one sec. Make sure we're going. And we are. We got an early zap too. Look at that. From Daniel, 121 sats. What a beautiful thing. If you're watching on YouTube, you should strongly consider zap.stream. You can find it by going to bitcoinjourney.ca/stream. I wanted to make it easy for people to find, or you can just go to zap.stream and it'll be like the first video that pops up there. So big shout out to Daniel. Shout out to Letha. They're both in the chat over there. And what a nice welcome to the show this morning. I saw there was 5 or 6 likes already before we even hit the record button. So big shout out to everybody who's been tuning in, who's been showing up, who's been participating in the live chat, because it makes a big difference. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of knowledgeable people within this group and this community, and it just makes everybody better and stronger. So shout out to you. Johnny's in the house. Crypto Heathen is in the house. Jason, rock and roll. What do we got this morning? Morning. All purchasing power to the people. Bitcoin winning. Sure feels that way. We might have a long show today. I got a lot of stuff to get through here, so I hopefully you have your morning booked off. Clear the schedule for your morning, please. Kosh Jello. I think he changed his name. He shortened it a little bit. Good morning, Rick. Like has been smashed. My man. Look at that. Zap.stream is buzzing. We got Letha, Daniel, Francis, and Mav over there. Good morning, everybody. What a beautiful morning. What a beautiful day. And what a beautiful welcome to the show today. Thank you. Arnie's being good. It's pretty chill here this morning. Calm and cheerful. It's actually a pretty good mantra. That's something we talked about on Tuesday, I think it was. We watched a short clip on the Living in the Future tier. And that's something that I think is going to stick around in my life. The mantra of being calm and cheerful. Very easy to remember and very simple. And I think it'll go a long way if you kind of implement that into your own life every day, every interaction, calm and cheerful. Rick Costa also in the zap.stream chat. Love to see that. And Jose as well. Whew. We're buzzing. We're buzzing, folks. Okay, well, like I said, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. So let's get straight to it. First of all, I want to say welcome. It's been taking me a little bit longer to get through my intro here, but that's okay. There's always lots of stuff going on. But welcome back to the Daily Bitcoin Journey. This is an actionable and logical discussion for Bitcoiners and for future Bitcoiners. It is a live show every single day, 9 a.m. Eastern time. We've been going strong for it's almost April. So 3 months, November, December, we're heading into month 6 of this every single day. And it's only going to get more and more fun as we go along here. Brennan is in the house. Good morning. Okay, let's get to her. So the first thing I want to do, usually I start with the metrics. Let's start with the metrics. Let's get warmed up here a little bit. Even though it is Thursday, we're well lubricated by Thursday. So let's get to the metrics. Let's see what we got going on in the world of Bitcoin today. I saw some incredibly low fees this morning on the blockchain. So we are currently block height 636,659. If you are transacting on the Bitcoin Layer 1 network, you're paying about 17 sats per VByte. The last 2 blocks before that were 9 sats per VByte. 9. This is the cheapest I've seen it. I saw one that was 6 the other day. But if you are somebody who's consolidating your UTXOs, consider doing it today. And that's actually one of the questions we're going to be running through today, is just a little bit of advice, discussion on UTXOs. So if that's an unfamiliar term to you, if you don't know what a UTXO is or how you should be managing that, make sure to stick around here. We'll probably tackle that one pretty early on. So the last block that was mined, Foundry USA, they earned 6.44 Bitcoin for their work, and they got $452,000 worth of Bitcoin for that. Pretty good. Mav says he remembers the good old days of 1 sat per VByte. I don't know. What do you guys think? I don't know if we'll ever get back there again. I know Odell and Marty have the ongoing bet about the mempools never clearing, but I'm not sure myself. I tend to agree with Odell on that. I don't think that it'll ever clear again. But I mean, we probably say that every bull run, and then a bear comes along and destroys that logic. So if you're in the camp that's under the opinion that we're in a 10-year bull run now, then you probably don't think that mempools are ever going to clear. And maybe just because this is a Bitcoin Q&A, we might have some people who are newer to Bitcoin. We're talking about Bitcoin layer 1 here. So you think about Bitcoin in 2 layers, layer 1, layer 2. Layer 1 is the on-chain, very secure, a little bit slower, costs more, but it's what Bitcoin is. And over the last 5-6 years, there's been layer 2 development, which is Lightning Network. And so with that, it's actually not an on-chain transaction. It's just pools basically sending Bitcoin back and forth to each other. And so that is much cheaper, much faster. And that's what we will be using in the future. Most people will never send a layer 1 transaction. But if you are somebody who's just getting into Bitcoin, it is something that I would highly recommend, is sending a Bitcoin transaction. It is the most incredible thing that you will ever do in your life. You enter in your amount, you copy and paste your recipient's address, you send however much Bitcoin you want, you set your own transaction fee. When you send that transaction, it goes into the mempool. That's where it hangs out for a while. And until you set your fee high enough where one of the miners picks it up and it goes into a block, once it gets into a block, that will be there forever. Right? So you have to really pay attention to your transaction fees. Some wallets will do it themselves automatically. But if you use a wallet like Sparrow, which is what I recommend most, Sparrow wallet, you can actually set your own fee. So if you're in a rush, you set it for a high priority, high fee. If you're not in any sort of rush, you set it to a lower fee and pay a little bit less fees on it. So that's the breakdown of the UTXOs today. And we just saw 2 blocks that were mined in the last 2 minutes. So that's kind of cool. We saw it live on the show. Cedo TV, hey brother, thank you for today's chat topic. Yeah, this is a question from Cedo TV. And it was the title of today's show, actually, because that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later on, is selling your house for Bitcoin, whether you should or not. And if you're even considering that, then you're probably in the right spot. So here's the metrics for today. Like I said, fees are incredibly low. The price today is $70,693 US. 1 year ago today, you could have purchased one Bitcoin for $27,000. And 4 years ago today, you could have purchased one for $6,266 US. Moscow time today, which is the equivalent to $1 US to one, or how many sats, is 1,420. So $1 US will get you 1,420 sats. The lower that goes, the higher price Bitcoin is going to be. Here in Canada, price is 95,792. It still makes my jaw drop every time I have to say that the price of one Bitcoin in Canada is $95,000. Nuts. It's nuts. So Moose Jaw time today, which is the equivalent of Moscow time here in Canada, one loonie will get you 1,046 sats. That has been today's metrics, sponsored by nobody. Sponsored by this show, The Bitcoin Journey, just talking logic. Okay, well, I thought I had a little, oh, here it is. Okay. So this is what I wanted to start the show with today. Believe it or not, like I said, I've been doing this show for 5 or 6 months now, every morning. And you kind of would expect quite a bit of hate. If you're doing anything online, there's usually people who are shitting on whatever you're talking about. That's just life. That's how the internet works. But honestly, it's been about 95% positive compared to negative. So it's very motivating to me just how many Bitcoiners there are out there and how many people are supporting channels like this. But every once in a while, you run into some comments that aren't so friendly, and this one's not bad. It's a legit conversation, and that's why I wanted to bring it up here. I don't want to add any fuel to the real negative comments, but this one is. I think that a lot of people actually believe that this is the case, so I kind of wanted to touch on it and see and give my opinion on it. So over in the Zapdot stream, we also got Phoenix Falconer in there. Good morning. And Daniel says, makes your moose jaw drop, the price of Bitcoin in Canada. Good material there. Good material, Daniel. Okay, well, let's get to this. Let's get to this comment here. Sachi in the house this morning. Good morning, my friend. 95 grand worth of monopoly money, says Nimlord. You ain't wrong. It's funny. I think I saw something a little while ago that you could actually look at the price of like a Monopoly game, the money in there from like when the game first came out, the dollars in there and how much people pay for that old Monopoly game. Monopoly money is actually worth more than the dollar. It's gained purchasing power more than our real dollar has. So thanks Trudeau for that one. Jay Snyder, good morning. That's a new face in the chat. Blacked out, but that's okay. Brennan says selling the house for Bitcoin is definitely a great move for some people out there. It's not for everyone, that's for sure, but it's a boss move. Yep, we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on, but let's start with this. Let's start with this comment first. This is from 2020 onwards. So he or she says, Bitcoin has some flaws. I'm well aware that it is one of mankind's greatest inventions. It has the capacity and capability of becoming the base layer for money, but it could do with one of the following tweaks. So here's how 2020 onwards would change Bitcoin. He appreciates the fact that it is good money, greatest invention, but here's how he would change Bitcoin. So number one, at least 5 million Bitcoin are lost forever. A lot of Bitcoin owners don't fully trust their spouse with their seed phrase, so we can expect that 16 million total supply to be 10 million by 2040. So he's saying that there's been Bitcoin lost and he expects much more Bitcoin to be lost for that reason. People will continue to die, taking their seed phrase to the grave. Taking that into account, it should be voted on by the devs and node operators that from 2026 onwards, Bitcoin's max supply increases by 200,000 Bitcoin per year for 75 years. So that's a legit point. He's saying that, there's lots of Bitcoin that's already lost. Most people are well aware of that. I don't think that that's priced into Bitcoin, honestly, but Bitcoiners know that. And he says that more and more people will continue to lose their Bitcoin through death or through stubbornness to set up their inheritance planning with their family. And I absolutely agree with that as well. So he thinks that we should vote on it, or the devs and the node operators should vote on supply increase of 20,000 Bitcoin per year for the next 75 years. So that's number one. And then also he says, number two is very few people will use it for anything other than store of value, which defeats the purpose. Half defeats the purpose. So let's touch on, I think that what I'm going to say to that, my response is kind of falls under the same thing. So what I would say with that comment is that those are very valid points. It makes sense that because there's so much Bitcoin that's lost and going to be lost, we should consider increasing the supply instead of decreasing it every year. But what I would say to that is both of these points they just make Bitcoin more scarce. That's all it does. And the number itself does not matter. So it's 21 million Bitcoin. That's how many will ever exist. But that's just a number. It could have been 210 million Bitcoin. The price would be a little bit less, how much people are willing to pay for it. But it doesn't matter how much Bitcoin there is. The only thing that matters is that it's fixed. It's fixed and transparent, and the supply schedule is known. So it could be 21 billion Bitcoin. it doesn't matter, because as people continue to lose Bitcoin and people continue to use it for a store of value instead of for actual currency, it's going to become more scarce. And so when it becomes more scarce, all we're going to do is move the zeros, move the decimal points. So right now we price things in Bitcoin. In 10 years from now, we won't know what the price of Bitcoin is. We'll only know what the price of a sat is. And then 10 years from there, we're not going to know what a sat is anymore. We're just going to know what a microsat costs. And that's kind of how I see this whole thing playing out. So both of these, very good points, but you're missing the fact that the number is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the scarcity and the fixed supply of Bitcoin. Does that make sense? And so over time, even if the supply actually continues to shrink, people lose it, people lock it up forever, the actual circulating supply of Bitcoin shrinks. All that's going to do is make the actual Bitcoin more valuable. And we're just going to keep moving the decimal points for it to make sense to us as humans. That's all we're going to do. It's all just numbers. So the actual max supply itself does not matter. The fact that it's fixed matters. So great points. I definitely do not agree that we should be increasing the supply of Bitcoin ever. I think that it'll defeat the whole purpose of it. I think that if we ever voted in a supply increase, that would change the whole dynamic of Bitcoin. And the beauty of it is that it has been unchanged. We've added a couple things, some soft forks along the way, just improving it. But if you actually go and change the supply schedule, we're basically going to be Ethereum at that point. And then maybe from there, we'll switch to proof of stake instead of proof of work. So great points. I do not agree with either of those. We should not be increasing the supply of Bitcoin. Defeats the purpose of it. So that's how I wanted to start the show today. Cito, look at this comment. I've been called a Bitcoin thumper, conspiracy theorist, Trump supporter. What the fuck? I'm Canadian. Whenever I talk about Bitcoin to peeps. Well, you're definitely not alone there. One thing that people tend to do in recent society is that if you say one thing about Bitcoin, or you say one thing about Trump, or one thing about freedom, all of a sudden you're a right-wing conspiracy theorist. And that's honestly part of why I started this channel, is because I know that there are so many people out there who feel like that. And having some sort of community and a place where we can talk about this stuff logically instead of emotionally, I think people appreciate that. So I'm in the same boat, man, or woman, but that's it, man or woman. Could be a spicy show today. Yeah, Mav says, let them try to increase the supply. You can divide the Bitcoin indefinitely with soft forks. Yep. The key to Bitcoin is its divisibility. You can add as many decimal points to it as you want. The key is that it's fixed. So Crypto Ethan says, I see no issue at all with Bitcoin being lost forever. Me neither. It makes the network, or it makes the coins that are out there that have access to more valuable. Okay, so that's the first question. By the way, we're 18 minutes into this. This is the Bitcoin Q&A. We do this show every Thursday morning. We take questions from email, 88sats@proton.me, YouTube comments, nostr questions, DMs, anything. So that's what we're doing today. We're talking about everything Bitcoin. And we do have many more questions to get through here, so I better shut up for a while and move on. Okay, let's get to, wow. I do think that this is going to be a longer show today. Just so much to get through here. We might have to push some questions to next week, but that's okay. So let's start with, what should we start with here? We'll do a quick Nylum update. So we talked about yesterday, 2 days ago, we talked about Nylum, that they announced that they're going to be buying, this is a gold mining company. They're going to be buying Bitcoin. And I think it was like $1.7 billion worth of Bitcoin. As soon as they announced that, the price of Bitcoin, or the price of their stock, just skyrocketed. I think it was up 1,800%. And then yesterday we find out that the CEO has resigned, and that he claimed it was a pump and dump scheme. And then yesterday, during the trading hours of the stock market, the stock plummeted to 1 cent. So good thing. If you managed to make some money on that, good on you. But I'm sure a lot of people just lost a lot of money on that. So just you have to be careful with all that kind of stuff. One of the real things about Bitcoin that I'm drawn to is the fact that you should have inherent trust with people and things that you see, but you have to verify that yourself. And in that case, it just didn't make any sort of sense that they had a $5 million market cap, I think, max. And they were talking about buying 1.7 billion worth of Bitcoin. So when you're reading headlines, make sure that you just, use some common sense and logic and save yourself some money. I see an image here in Zap.stream. How does that work? I can't open that. Oh yeah, I can. Get to the nostr. Does that show up on people's feed? I didn't know you could put images in there. That's kind of cool. You can zap each other. You can send pictures, apparently, which is far superior to Bitcoin or to YouTube. You can also put links in there, I think. Oh, this laptop's running hot. Hopefully everything is running okay. I'm going to try putting a link into Zap.stream. See what happens. No, it didn't work. See if I put HTTP in there first. Well, this is what you get with live shows. A little bit of delay sometimes. There you go. That works. Look at that. Links work. You can't do links on YouTube, which is kind of one of my biggest... holy, missing lots of comments here. I got to stop fucking around here. Okay, let's get to some questions here. Let's let this computer chill a little bit. So this is the first question I'm going to start with. This is a question that we've had quite a few times in the last couple of weeks, but that's okay. I'm a firm believer in the fact that if you are somebody who's either new to Bitcoin or not an expert in Bitcoin, the more you can hear things, the better. The more touch points you have, the more dots you can connect in your own head, the better off you're going to be. So this is a question that says, this is from Golden Banjo on YouTube. Says, so let's say I have a cold wallet that I've sent multiple transactions to over the last few years. I would have multiple UTXOs, correct? Yes. Every time you send any Bitcoin from an exchange to your own wallet, that's one UTXO. So it says, so sending the total balance to a new wallet address will condense it into one UTXO. Yes. So if you move all those UTXOs that you had, you send it to a new address, that's going to be one UTXO. That's considered consolidating UTXOs. So what advantage does that give you? Would I want to keep that address with one UTXO in it, or does it matter? Thanks, bud. Love the show. So let's talk about that. Two questions there. Would I want to keep that address with one UTXO in it, or does it matter? This is kind of what I would say, honestly. And this is what I have advised people to do before. And that's what I do. So think about your Bitcoin in different pieces. Don't consider it all like you have one Bitcoin. Let's start with that. Let's say you own one Bitcoin total. You never want to have that Bitcoin all together in one address or one wallet. It just doesn't make any sense. If you ever plan on spending that Bitcoin, it doesn't make any sense. And so you also have to consider the fact that if something were to happen, if you got hacked, all of your Bitcoin is in that single wallet, which would be pretty tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. And so the main drawback to that is, first of all, the risk of, getting hacked and losing all of your Bitcoin. But the second risk to that is your privacy. So let's say that you do take people's advice on Twitter and YouTube, and you consolidate your UTXOs into one single UTXO. You think you're doing great. But when you go to spend that Bitcoin, if you're concerned at all with privacy, if you ever go to spend that Bitcoin, you're going to move it to somebody. And with Bitcoin, you're able to see every single part of that transaction. So even though they're going to be able to see your public address, the address that you're sending it from, and they're going to be able to look at that and see how much Bitcoin you have. So if you have a Bitcoin in one address, one UTXO, and you send it, they're going to be able to see that you have one Bitcoin. And that's going to put a very big target on your back, especially if Bitcoin gets to what we think it's going to be. Right. So what I would suggest there is I would put about 80% of your whole stack into one UTXO, one wallet, and just keep that forever. Maybe I think the theory I had was 88% of your total stack into one, but 80 works as well. Just go with 80 to 90%. Get that into one UTXO, get that into one wallet, and protect that with your life. You're going to have that forever. You don't plan on spending that ever, right? And even if you happen to, there are different things you can do with it, and there will be more that gets added in the future as well in terms of privacy advantages there. But from there, then you can split it into a few different UTXOs. You could have one worth 2 million sats, 1 million sats, 500,000 sats. And the one thing you really want to keep in mind here is that when you actually, what are you going to need those for in the future? Because the more UTXOs you have within one transaction, the more it's going to cost you to send. That's basically what you're doing the consolidation for, is to save fees in the future. Because every transaction is just a bunch of data. And the more data you put into that transaction, the more it's going to cost you. It makes sense, right? Every block only has so much space on it for data. And the more UTXOs, the more you fill that up, the more it's going to cost you. So not only that, but you should also be considering different ways for setting some aside on the Lightning Network or on the Liquid Bitcoin network. But that's a whole different conversation. So I hope that helps. I think that answered the questions. So the next one here. The next one is from Summer Breeze on YouTube. It says, if the government makes a 6102 attack, will Bitcoin ETF holders go bankrupt, or will they be paid in fiat? And that's a good question. That is a great question, because I think that I'm not really sure if the government's going to do a 6102 attack, which is basically what they did with gold back in the 30s, I think it was, where they issued this executive order 6102, and they came after everybody who had gold, came to their house, knocked on the door, took their gold. And I don't know if they got anything for that. That's the part I don't know. I don't know if they said, give us your gold and we'll give you some dollars for it, or if they just straight up took it. Maybe somebody in the chat will know that. I'm way behind on the chat here. I'm sorry for that. But anyways, that's what the 6102 attack is. And there's a lot of people who think that it's going to happen with Bitcoin, and it very well could. If Bitcoin gets to a point where it's very valuable and the US government realizes that it's fucked in terms of their debt and their dollar, they could very well come after people's Bitcoin. And you always have to keep in mind that the governments are always going to go after the lowest hanging fruit. So that is the ETFs. That is anybody who has Bitcoin on exchanges. And then from there, it's people who have bought Bitcoin on a KYC exchange and sent it to a wallet. I think they'll have a very much harder time proving that you actually have that Bitcoin if you do it properly, but they still could link it to you. But the ETFs and the Bitcoin on exchanges for sure will be the lowest hanging fruit for the government. So it says, will Bitcoin ETFs holders go bankrupt, or will they be paid in fiat? I think probably with the amount of capital that's in the ETFs right now, the people who are involved with the ETFs, I don't think that they would ever just seize it and not give people anything for it. I would imagine that they would be paid out in fiat for that. But that's going to be, if the government gets to that point where they're doing shit like that, the fiat's going to be so far gone at that point, it's going to be worthless. So even if you do get paid in fiat, that's not going to be a very good thing for you. The other thing to consider here, and I don't think that a lot of people are really understand the ETFs in this sense, but the other thing with the ETFs is that, let's say you have an ETF with BlackRock. You have $1 million worth of ETF, and you go to cash that out. You actually can't get Bitcoin for that It's not in kind. That's what it's called if they actually give you the Bitcoin if you want to. It's called an in-kind structure, I guess. But with these ETFs, they're not in kind. So when you go to sell that, they're going to give you cash for it. They're not actually going to send you the Bitcoin that you hold title to with that ETF. So that's going to create a taxable event for you if you aren't managing it properly. And with that's going to be a problem for people. And I think that if you are somebody who's just getting into the Bitcoin and you buy ETFs as kind of like a transition into Bitcoin, and all of a sudden after a year or two, you start paying closer attention to Bitcoin and you want to take that money off of the ETF and buy Bitcoin and self-custody that, you're going to be creating a taxable event with that. So that's something to consider. And I think the Hong Kong one announced that they weren't going to be like that. They actually were going to be in kind. So if you had a Bitcoin ETF, you wanted to sell it, they would actually send you the Bitcoin instead of cash for that. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I'm going to take a little bit of a breather here and check on the chats. We're running hot here. We're running hot. Oh, Grinder, my man, zapped 1,000 sats over on zap.stream. Fuck yeah. That's awesome. So the Grinder has a good comment here. He says, if you BIP38 encrypt that key and put it on a metal cold storage card, it's unlikely to get hacked. So I think he's talking about what were we talking about there? Oh, the one UTXO, the one wallet. Yeah. Put it onto metal cold storage. I agree with that. It's probably possible in some sort of very far-fetched event that happens, whether that's AI. I don't know if it's possible that they could ever hack Bitcoin. I don't think it's possible. I think that the way that the blockchain works in the 10-minute increments, I don't think that AI has the ability to actually hack Bitcoin or hack a wallet. But if you wanted to kind of boost that and go from a 24-word private key and add a passphrase, that just makes it so much more difficult for the potential hacker. So that's great advice from the Grinder. Big shout out to him for the zap on there. And great advice there. Always put your private keys onto steel. We talked about it yesterday. If your house were to burn down tomorrow, would your Bitcoin survive? That's a question that you have to ask yourself. And if the answer to that question is no, then you have to consider putting that onto steel. Any amount of Bitcoin. That's kind of what I used to talk in thresholds with Bitcoin in terms of their dollar value. But I would say if you have any sort of amount of Bitcoin over like 1 million sats, you should be looking into proper cold storage and putting that private key, your backup key, onto steel. That is my advice there. So let's check quickly on, it's pretty hard to stay on top of both chats here. I will say that. Okay, I'm gonna sorry, sit Cedo TV. I got to put this one on the back burner for a sec. Are there any questions in here? Crypto Ethan says images and stream comments seems dangerous. You're not wrong. But with dangers comes fun and entertainment too. So Sachi says, downside of having one massive UTXO is any prying eyes can see that big chunk in your wallet. The beauty of small UTXOs is privacy. Since you look on chain, you can only see that individual UTXO balance. Exactly. So this is something that you could consider here. This is a way to protect your own privacy. Is that if you are somebody buying Bitcoin on like Bull Bitcoin or an exchange, if you transfer that you wait for your balance to get up to say 1 million sats. You transfer that to a wallet, an address, and just use that as your spending balance. Like 2 or 3% of your Bitcoin, that's what your spending is going to be. And so if somebody were ever to try to trace that back to any addresses that you have, they would just run into the exchange's address. And that's kind of how far back it would go to. They don't know your name. They don't know any of that information. They'll just be able to track it back to the initial exchange there, right? So that's great advice there. And one thing I would say in terms of people dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and UTXO management is that you have to balance there. You have to manage the privacy, but you also have to manage how much you're willing to leave on an exchange at a given time if you are somebody who's dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin. And what I mean by that, if you're putting, say, $100 worth of Bitcoin every month into on the exchange, instead of transferring those every time into cold storage, let that balance build up on the exchange. And I know that the advice is to get your Bitcoin off of the exchanges as soon as you can, but in that case, it's just not going to be worth it to send those Bitcoin to your wallet every time. So then you have to ask yourself, how much Bitcoin am I willing to leave on the exchange before I actually send that to an address? So that's kind of the balance that you have to have. Whether that's 1 million sats, whether that's 10 million sats, that's kind of dependent on where you are. So that's that. So Grinder says on the comment about the pics, he says that's why we have mute lists on Nostr, but you can post pics, videos, and most importantly, Nostr events. It reduces the bounce rate of viewers. Interesting. So I think that Grinder is one of the fellas who's helping develop Zap.stream. So big shout out to Grinder. Big shout out to Kieran. I absolutely love Zap.stream. I think it's going to be a big part of our future as Bitcoiners and as Nostr users. So big shout out to them. Very much appreciated. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. I'm going to show a couple videos here too. We're already 36 minutes into this, but that's okay. We might run a little late today. So this is the first one. I'm going to bring this up on screen here. Oh, we're running hot. Is everything quality-wise okay here, sound-wise? This computer is just humming. Shell is in the house. Good morning. Shell, get over to Zap.stream. You're a Nostr guy. Go to Zap.stream / no. Well, you can just go to Zap.stream to find it pretty easily, but you can go to bitcoinjourney.ca/stream to get to the Zap.stream chat. Okay, so here's the first video we're going to watch. This is of our guy, Larry Fink. Fairy Link, we'll call him. This is Fairy Link. But before we watch the video, I want to give a shout out to Thomas at heyapollo.com. He's also doing some really good work in Bitcoin. He's got a great Twitter feed, and I would highly suggest that. Two follows on Twitter. I'm not a big Twitter guy. I spend the majority of my time on Nostr, but two of my favorite follows are Thomas from Hey Apollo and Bitcoin News. So those are my kind of two people that I always check on in terms of Bitcoin. So this is what he says. Larry is excited, and I would be too. When BlackRock has 500,000 Bitcoin and they pushed up the price to 1 million, BlackRock will make 1.25 billion in fees every year forever. Think about that. Let's take a second. Let's think about that one. BlackRock has 500,000 bit. When BlackRock has 500, they're not there yet, but when they do, and they push the price to 1 million, BlackRock will make $1.25 billion in fees every year forever. So yeah, no shit. Larry Fink is going to be excited about the demand for Bitcoin right now. They're not stupid people. I'll tell you that for free. They're not stupid people. So let's see what old Fairy Link has to say here.
Look, I'm very bullish on the long-term viability of Bitcoin.
I was going to say, did that surprise you?
That surprised me how much that's gone up. I mean, look, it is. We're creating now a market that has more liquidity, more transparency, and I'm pleasantly surprised, and I would never have predicted it before we filed it, that we were going to see this type of retail demand.
So you thought you'd do good, but not this good.
I thought. Yes.
Well, IBIT is your ETF over at iShares.
Yes.
it's about to overtake Grayscale, which was in the business certainly a lot longer. You look at the gains since January 11th when it first came about.
Yes.
Have you ever seen this much inflow this quickly into
IBIT is the fastest growing ETF in the history of ETFs. Look, I'm very bullish.
Fuck that guy. I can't stand these people. I can't stand to look at them. I can't stand to listen to them. And he says that he thought it was going to do good. Oh, did you, Larry? Did you think that Bitcoin was going to be good? Okay. I must have misheard you then when you were calling it rat poison and a Ponzi scheme and everything else for the last 5 years while you were getting ready for this. Anyways, that's not the point. I'm not going to get fired up here. We got to stay calm. We got to stay cheerful. I mean, it's good news for Bitcoin. BlackRock can try to get as much Bitcoin as they want. They're not going to change anything with it. That's my theory. Not really theory, but it's reality of things. There's just no chance that they could have any sort of impact unless all the Bitcoiners decided that they're going to sell their Bitcoin and buy dumb shit. But at that point, when Bitcoin's that high, what are you going to buy? So anyways, it's good. It's good that, you know, people are able to access Bitcoin now. All the big capital is able to access Bitcoin now. It's disgusting how much fees BlackRock's going to charge on it. So all we can really do is just keep pushing forward and telling people the dangers of the ETFs, telling people how important it is to take self-custody of your own Bitcoin. You don't want to have any sort of counterparty risk with Larry Fink. You don't. You want to have exposure to the assets that he's investing in, but you want to keep those assets in your own possession. That's the entire point of Bitcoin. So one thing I would say on the ETF is I've watched a couple videos in the what would you call it, MicroStrategy realm in the last couple of days, and I'm not going to give you any advice on this, but strongly consider looking into MicroStrategy shares instead of the ETFs for a few reasons. First one, I think it's actually going to outperform the ETFs, just what Saylor's doing with it and his long-term vision for it. But the other part is that there's no fees. You're not paying any management fees to Larry Fink with that. And Saylor holds his keys himself. You're not going to have, he knows what he's doing. So that's what I would say. Like I said, not investment advice at all. I'm going to be trading some of my ETF shares from a Canadian one, not Larry Fink. I'm not giving him any money, but I'm going to probably trade some of it for MicroStrategy shares. It just makes more sense to me. So that's my thoughts on that. What do we got here? What else we got? Let's check in the zap.stream. It's buzzing this morning. This might be the most active day on zap.stream so far. Jose says, I appreciate anyone who grinds. Me too. If you're not grinding right now in this period of time in history, then you're fucking up. You are. You should be doing everything that you possibly can to provide as much value to people right now. Earn as much Bitcoin as you possibly can, because this opportunity window here is very small. And we're lucky to be alive during this time. And there's a lot of people who are messing it up. So I agree with that. Grinder is watching from Europe. Letha liked the fairy link comment there. The Grinder also says all of social and digital media is going to zero against Nostr. Max Kaiser 2028. I agree. I agree that Nostr is the new internet. We've moved on from the centralized servers, the control, the absolute gong show that the internet has turned into. Nostr is the future, and it's very bright. I watched I was going to play this clip on the Living in the Future, but I think I'd rather just send people there to watch it. But if you have some time today, watch, it's a YouTube video called Monetizing on Nostr. And it's by Milan, I think his name is. He's the creator of Primal, which is one of the main clients on Nostr. But he goes through everything that's happening on Nostr right now. He explains it. He gives use cases for it. He talks about the clients. And it's not just a social media thing. This has the potential to change everything online. And it already is. And so shout out to Grindr, to Kieran for being a part of that and building Zap.stream. And I'm happy to be streaming on there. It does cost a little bit. It costs sats, especially if you want good quality on Zap.stream. But I think it's very worth it. And we got to be supporting these projects and these tools as much as we possibly can. So that's what we got there. I also wanted to give a shout out. I don't know. I was going to talk about this at the top of the show here. But kind of on that note, I was looking at my wallet of Satoshi yesterday. And I noticed a zap of 8,888 sats in there. And I'll bring it up here just to see what it says. I forget what it was. But it didn't say who it was from. There's no way I could tell who it was from. But it just says, thanks so much for your help. So 888,000 sats. Thanks so much for your help. No association, no name. I have no idea who it was. So I just wanted to say thank you to whoever that was. I put my wallet of Satoshi address every day in the description. So if you are somebody you don't want to pay a recurring monthly membership fee, I get it. But if you do feel like giving some back to the show, you can just send it to the wallet of Satoshi in there. So big shout out to them. I want to say thank you very much for that. And I wish I knew who it was. But at the same time, it got me thinking, oh, there we go. That was Letha. There we go. I was going to say at the same time, I just love that. I absolutely love the fact that you can do that. And that would never happen in the fiat world. You'd never just send somebody an e-transfer for helping you with something. People bill you for their time, and that's the end of it. You're either pissed off or you're happy, whatever it is. But something like that would never happen in the fiat world. So I'm just blown away by the people within Bitcoin who are in Bitcoin right now and how supportive they are, how generous they are. And it is what's going to push this whole movement forward. So big shout out to Letha for that. Thank you. Much appreciated. Okay, let's carry on. Let's carry on as we were. Next question here. So actually, with that in mind, Letha asked a question here. So I'm going to answer hers. I'm going to prioritize hers. So her question was, at what point would you suggest someone run their own Bitcoin node? Do you know the general cost and difficulty level? So maybe in the chat, if somebody has some good advice on that, let Letha know, but I'm going to do my best to answer that. And so running your own node, one thing I would say is you really have to ask yourself why you're doing it. Are you doing it because you want to verify that the Bitcoin that says that belongs to you, you want to verify that it actually does belong to you? Because when you're using a wallet like Sparrow or any other wallet, you're basically putting your trust in somebody else to verify that for you. And so if that's your reason for it, then I do think it is a worthwhile cause. But if you're somebody who's just getting into Bitcoin and you're trying to do a whole bunch of things on your checklist in terms of what you've heard on Twitter, YouTube, people telling you things to do, I wouldn't be doing it. And I just think that there's much more to learn before you get into that. I do think that at the end of the day, your end goal should be to have your own node. Absolutely. I think that the more nodes we have in the world, the better this whole thing is going to go. But don't make that a priority off the start. And especially if you don't have like a computer, essentially what you're doing when you're running your own node is that you're downloading a copy of the blockchain. And every 10 minutes that updates. Every time there's a new block, that blockchain, that ledger gets updated on your computer for you to verify. And so you can connect to your wallets, your Sparrow wallet, to verify that those are actually there on the blockchain. But in terms of the price, like you just need to download, I think it's called Bitcoin Core. download the software, and then you just have the ledger there. You connect it to your wallet, and that's that. It's not a huge cost. But if you're somebody who's going to go out there and buy a new server, a new computer, run your own node, I think that money would be much better spent on Bitcoin. And that's the case for a lot of different things. If you're somebody who's new to Bitcoin and you hear about a conference or getting the newest block clock or whatever that is, just because you want to feel like you're part of things there. And actually, I haven't watched British Hodl for a while, but I love that message that he spreads there, is that focus on Bitcoin first. Get as much Bitcoin as you possibly can, and then do stuff like this. So that's what I would say. In terms of the cost, minimal. You just need to have enough storage to, keep the blockchain on your computer. But if you're going to be buying your own computer, running your own server, it could cost quite a bit. And I don't think it's very difficult to do. So there's some, this is from the grinder in the chat. He says, if you download Bitcoin QT, you just run the installer and sync the chain. It's as simple as installing any other app on your PC. There you go. And Grinder agrees. He says, great advice, buy sats instead. So something to consider, whether that's a Lightning node, Bitcoin node, block clock, all these different things. There's people selling things to you, Bitcoin conferences. Just skip that. Get as much Bitcoin as you possibly can. Every dime, every nickel that's under your couch cushions right now, put that into Bitcoin. But don't be buying dumb shit, and don't be getting ahead of yourself here. This whole journey is meant to be slow. Take it slow. Be calm and cheerful. That's my advice for everything now. There you go. There you go, folks. So this is a good point from Brendan here. I only leave the amount on an exchange that is equal to the dollars I would walk through the city in in my pocket. That's great advice. And I would say the exact same thing about like a wallet of Satoshi. Whatever amount that you would be comfortable carrying around in your back pocket, in your wallet, in cash, that's what you should be keeping on a exchange or a Phoenix wallet, or like not a Phoenix, a wallet of Satoshi. Something that you can't get back if you lose it. Justine, good morning. Better late than never. Got stuck in LA traffic. Ooh, crazy. Well, you and I live a little bit different lives. There's not a whole lot of traffic out here. There's a side-by-side that drives by a couple of days or a couple times per day. But I just have a private road right in front of me. I'll show you. There it is. There you have it. I probably just doxed myself. I'm sure AI will be able to track my location based on that. Great comment here. Pomp. The only reason why I run Bitcoin node is to learn how it works. But if I'm just a long-term hodler, I'll just buy Bitcoin and store in a cold. Yeah. That's really good advice. And I do think that that's something, like I said, as you go through your journey, your Bitcoin journey, this is something that you just do over time. You don't try to do everything at once. You're going to overwhelm yourself. You're going to lose money. You're going to screw up, and you're going to regret that. So just take it slow. I love the fact and appreciate the fact that you're wanting to learn how it works. And I do think that, like I said, the end goal here for everybody is that you should be running your own node. Just don't make it a priority if you don't have to. Just buy sats. So that's my answer to you there. Jose in the chat, in the zap.stream chat, reference the link bitcoinershit.net. One of the very early episodes of the Bitcoin journey, we talked about that, bitcoinershit.com. You can look at how much you would have paid for like a Discman. Discmans weren't around in Bitcoin era. But Apple, like a iPhone 4, how much sats that would have cost, or how much Bitcoin. So the moral of the story is, don't buy dumb shit. Moving on. This next one here. So we're going to touch on this quickly. Yeah, we're going to touch on this quickly. So let's share this. The next question here, I'm going to share this little news story from Bitcoin News first. We haven't talked about Bitcoin News yet, but that's okay. They get a lot of airtime on here. But this is from Bitcoin News this morning. This we didn't really have a news today. The Q&As don't really have news, but I do want to touch on this. But the news section we do every day is sponsored by Bitcoin News. So they are my favorite follow on Twitter. As I mentioned, their bitcoinnews.com is a great resource for finding any sort of information, the headlines, and you can dive a little bit further into it as well. The links are in the description if you want to check out bitcoinnews.com. And they also got a YouTube channel now. So they're getting pretty active on there, and I would suggest checking them out. But the piece of news here is that Texas-based Bitcoin miner Giga Energy joins forces with oil firm Phoenix Global and IT provider Exatech to launch a 2 megawatt Bitcoin mine atop Vaca Muerta, Argentina. So that's pretty cool. And I like this whole this headline here, actually. CNBC, shout out to them. But it says Texan Bitcoiners start mining in Argentina, where the peso is in a free fall. So think about that. Think about kind of where we are right now in the world in terms of the currencies, and how every single currency right now is not only falling to Bitcoin, but it's also falling against the US dollar. And so we are going to see companies like this from the US go and invest in countries like Argentina because their dollar has so much purchasing power there. It makes a lot of sense. So they're going to be paying their electricity costs. They're going to be paying their infrastructure costs in Argentina pesos, which is like nothing compared to US dollars. So they're going to invest, they're going to start earning Bitcoin, and they're going to pay off that infrastructure debt quite easily with US dollars while they can. So I thought that was very interesting. And the next question here in the chat kind of relates to this. And this was a question from Dan Bauer on YouTube. And he says, what exactly is stranded energy? Just the energy in forms typically left untapped, i.e. volcanoes? So this is kind of what you have to think about in terms of stranded energy. This is what I would say on it. Think about how our world works right now in terms of how we get our power, how we get electricity. It comes from somewhere, right? If you're in Canada or the US, there's power lines that run, and that's where your energy comes from. It's coming from a power source, but it has to travel to your house, and it's not cheap to do that. And energy and electricity only travel so far, right? So historically, based on that premise, that you have to, use these resources to produce power and then get that power to other places in order to earn a return on that. So if you're thinking about somewhere like Costa Rica, where there's a waterfall, or in El Salvador, where there's a volcano, there's a whole bunch of these natural resources around the world that you can tap into for energy. But the problem in the past is that we had no way of getting that energy to any communities because it's stranded. It's out there where nobody's living. And so now with Bitcoin, because let's use the waterfall as an example. You use the waterfall to produce energy. You convert that into electricity, and that requires infrastructure. You need electricity that you can transfer and sell. That's how you make a return on the investment that you put into setting up that infrastructure. And infrastructure requires capital and people. So you build that infrastructure. You have to wait for the community to show up that you're providing power to. Otherwise, you have to send that electricity even further, which costs more, and a lot of it's wasted. So you have to eat that initial upfront cost of the infrastructure and then just wait for communities to be built around that. And sometimes it never happens. Sometimes, you have to have the people there to run the operation, and then you have a few families there. But if that never amounts to anything, then it's all for nothing. But with Bitcoin, it flips that on its head. You can use a natural resource like a waterfall. You convert that energy directly right there on site into Bitcoin, set up a mining machine right there on site. It doesn't have to travel anywhere. And then you can convert that into money, directly into money. You don't have to sell that to anybody. You can convert that energy right into money on the spot. And so from there, you pay off your infrastructure much faster. You can build instead of wait for people to build it. You can build it if you want to, or you can just leave it there. But right now there's resources all around the world that are completely unused just for the simple fact that that energy has to transfer out to where people are. But now with Bitcoin mining, you don't need that anymore. It is the only asset that I'm aware of that you can convert natural resources, energy from that directly into money. And not only money, but the greatest money that we've ever known. So that's my thoughts on that. Very interesting. And I think that that's a very underappreciated aspect of Bitcoin, how it's going to change energy, how it's going to find the cheapest source of energy across the world. And it doesn't matter who's around it. Pretty cool. So I don't know what, should I get to this last topic? I kind of feel bad here for Cedo TV. I kind of blew off his question, but I'm going to do a full show on this next week. So we're already over an hour, but I'm going to go to this question here. I'm just going to briefly touch on it, and then we'll call it a day. So the question here is that, could you do a video about selling your house and renting instead to buy Bitcoin? So should you sell your house and rent instead, and then use those proceeds to buy Bitcoin? So I'm actually going to show a video here. All the questions worked out perfectly with the news that I wanted to share today, and that's very rare. So I'm going to bring this up. We're going to watch this. I'm sure some people have seen this, but it is pretty cool. So this is a guy, this is from Bitcoin News as well. It says Bitcoin changes lives. This was kind of surfacing around last night on the internet. But here's the clip.
Why don't you go in the shelter?
Because me and her, she has separation anxiety,
Okay.
and PTSD, so she has somebody to be there when she goes to sleep. So
I'm also pregnant.
yeah,
You're pregnant out
Yeah.
here?
yeah,
Why can't you go into the shelter?
it's just a
I can't really
Couple.
sleep without him.
yeah,
Oh, and you said they're full? The shelter's full?
yeah. Most
Just
of
the
them
way
have
it was,
waiting
yeah.
lists.
And they're churches? Is there anywhere that will take you
Churches
guys?
won't really take you unless somebody's there and you can't sleep there at night.
So you have no options except to sleep out here?
Really though, if we have the tent,
Yeah. But I mean, you're leaving? You said you're leaving?
Yeah.
Where are you guys going to go?
we're gonna move states. We're gonna go to Kansas.
You're going to Kansas
Mhm.
to like start a new life?
Yeah, really though.
Okay.
Mhm.
What's in Kansas?
I got a house down there.
You have a house in Kansas?
Yeah, we're gonna go down there right now. Though.
You just bought it?
Yeah, I'm excited, bro.
Oh, what? How'd you buy a house in Kansas from here?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Shut up.
No, for real.
How much did you make on Bitcoin?
About 500,000.
Shut the fuck up.
But it's just in Bitcoin. I haven't withdrawn it yet.
So you have $500,000 in a Bitcoin account that you just bought a house,
Yep.
what? And you're going to Kansas,
Yep.
and you're living in a tent right now.
Yeah, that's why we're just giving away our stuff.
When did you decide to do this?
Yesterday, we just got the plane tickets.
That is unbelievable. And he's not going to be the only person to do that. That's for sure. And kind of throughout this week, we've been talking about how, the narrative right now in society is that if you're under the age of 30, you're not going to be able to afford a house. And I called that straight up bullshit. And I said that if anybody ever tells you that, if you're 30 years old or under, and somebody tells you that you're not going to be able to afford a house, it's bullshit. And I said that I do agree that in the fiat world, if you're earning fiat, saving in fiat, and trying to buy a house in dollars, you are never going to be able to do it unless you're a doctor or something that's really going to, push the needle forward. But for the average person, they're never going to be able to afford a house in the dollar system. But then you look at a guy like this, living in a tent in the woods with his pregnant girlfriend. And think about that. You have to like think about this on another level here. Because he's got to that point, and he's obviously, he didn't buy Bitcoin at $60,000 last month. He's had Bitcoin for a long time. And so he understands what's happening here. And I think that there's a lot of kids like him who understand what's happening here. And we might not hear about it or see anything on the news about it, but think about the level of conviction that that guy would have to go through to hold on to $500,000 worth of Bitcoin while you're sleeping in a tent in the woods. And knowing that at any time you could easily sell some of that Bitcoin and get a hotel room for a month. That's kind of how most people still think, is that they have this money. We're going to spend it. We're not going to live in a tent. We're going to spend this money. We're going to go get a hotel, live comfortably for a while. This dude is living in a tent in the woods, sitting on $500,000 worth of Bitcoin. It's another level that the Bitcoiners are on. And I think that it's only going to continue to change as we go forward here. So tying it into this question here in terms of, should you sell your house and buy Bitcoin? I don't think it really depends on what your situation is. That's what I would say. I don't think that it's wise to sell your house, buy Bitcoin, and start renting, mostly because rent is not cheap. And yeah, you're paying some interest on your mortgage. Yeah, you're paying for your property taxes. It's a pain in the ass, but you're probably not paying that much more for your mortgage payment and all your costs versus rent. Rent's insane right now. So you might get a bit of a break in terms of Bitcoin, but you're going to really inconvenience yourself. And especially if you're in a place that you love and you have no reason to live no reason to move other than to buy Bitcoin with it, I don't think that you should be moving or selling your house. I would say that you should consider refinancing it though. Depending on where you're at in your term. Probably if you're in the US and you've signed a 30-year mortgage at like 2% rate, maybe not, maybe a portion of it. But what I would consider now is refinancing your house, taking the proceeds from that, tax-free proceeds, buying Bitcoin, and then just sit on that. Don't ever sell it. Let it appreciate and just keep paying the mortgage payments. And even if you have to take an extra 10 years to pay off your house, like who the hell knows what the world's going to look like in 30 years from now. I do know that you're never going to get Bitcoin at this price again, for sure. And I'm not going to tell you to do that because I haven't done that myself. So don't consider that gospel and a surefire strategy. I did sell my rental house though back in 2021 at the peak of the market, peak of the Bitcoin market, sold my rental house and bought Bitcoin. But you never want to inconvenience yourself for Bitcoin. You still have to remember that we're only here for so long. So living in a tent in the woods is a little bit extreme, but it's still pretty cool. Just the fact that I do think that that's going to be the mentality of young people going forward, is they just see no future in the current system that we have. They're not stupid. They have access to every app, every video, every website. They know what's happening here. And the longer they hold on to that Bitcoin, the more power they're going to have in the future. And so I do think that if you are somebody who has a teenager in your life, if you're a teacher or a parent, whatever that is, it's important to start explaining to them the differences between fiat, our monetary system, and Bitcoin. Because once they understand that, they're never going to save any dollars anymore. They're going to be buying Bitcoin. And that's going to create such a different world for them into the future. So there you go. A couple things in the chat I wanted to talk about here in Zap.stream. First of all, Noah, I saw, she said, Parker Lewis showed a documentary called Stranded on this topic, not released yet. Follow Alana Media Villa on X if interested. So there's a documentary called Stranded, which is talking about stranded energy on this topic. Not out yet, but on Alana Media Villa. That's not the best name there. Not the easiest or most memorable name there. But zap.stream, if you're interested in checking that out, go over to zap.stream and find that Alana Media Villa. Anyways. Oh, so Grinder says in the full video, he said that he's been there for 1.5 years, or he's owned Bitcoin for 1.5 years. Either way, fucking crazy. Whether he's been there for 1.5 years or he's owned Bitcoin for only 1.5 years, he would have got Bitcoin for like what, 15,000 bucks at the time. But still, for it to be worth 500,000 now, he still would have had a big chunk in there. Holy. He said he had Bitcoin for 1.5 years. Damn. Good on him. Good on him. So shout out to, I can't see who this is, but it says first time using Zap. I can't zap you back though, so I don't know if you're set up properly or not. Anyways, zap.stream, incredible. So let's take a look at this question here. Jor, thing is, my sister and I inherited the house, and to be fair, my dad wants her to get the share of the house. We are going to sell, and I get what you're saying about refinancing. Okay, well, that's a totally different story then. I would definitely, if neither of you are like wanting to live in that house and you're just going to be selling the house, then absolutely there's nowhere else to be putting money right now. And I guess the other option there would be to keep the house and rent it out to somebody. And so you'd really have to take an in-depth analysis in terms of how much rent you can get for it, how much it's going to cost you to keep that. And you know, if it's generating 500 bucks a month, and you want to start just putting that directly into Bitcoin, that might be a viable strategy there. I don't think it is though, especially where we are in the Bitcoin market right now and what's about to happen in the next 6 months to a year. I don't think you're ever going to outdo a lump sum purchase today, regardless of how much and how long you DCA for. That's my take on it. So he says we sell the place, we both get 50-50, what puts me on the spot where I'm going to be renting. Oh, okay, I got you. But I agree and understand it was my choice, or my sister wasn't around, I would have done what you said. Okay, I got you. Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to have an actual, I don't know all the details, it's hard to know everything on a live show while everything's going on, but you can shoot me an email, 88sats@proton.me, and I'm pretty open to that anytime. It's always open, whether you got a question that we can talk about on the Thursday show or you need help with anything. Use that email address, 88sats@proton.me. So with that, we're an hour 12 into this. This has been the longest episode yet, definitely the most active episode yet as well. And so big shout out to everybody. It's a little bit not overwhelming, but it's much different when there's this amount of people in here and commenting. So it was, we got through it though. So what I will say is I hope you have, I'll say I appreciate everybody being here. Like I said, we've been doing this for 5 or 6 months now, every single morning. I think that a lot of people have been showing up every single day, which means that they're getting some sort of value from it. And so that's good. That's exactly what we wanted to do here. I originally set up the show to be at 8 in the morning because I didn't think anybody would actually show up in the chat at that time that early. And I planned on doing maybe 10 or 15 minutes every morning, just touching on a few different things to keep people in the loop. But it has evolved significantly. And if you are somebody out there like Cito, who said that he's been called a conspiracy theorist, a dummy for owning Bitcoin. If you feel like you have nobody to talk to out there, a lonely place, I get it. I've been there before. And so when that problem, I saw an opportunity there because I've been through that exact same stage in my life where I couldn't talk to anybody about Bitcoin. Everybody was calling me a dipshit, a dummy. This was during the big illness as well. And so I would have killed for a community that I could talk to back and forth things. Luckily enough, I had a couple friends that I could chat with about things, but not Bitcoin. And so what we created here is very simple. It's called Living in the Future. We're pretending that we're already living 10 years ahead where Bitcoin where 1 sat equals 1 Bitcoin. We're becoming better Bitcoiners in there. That's kind of the 3 main focuses there. Becoming better Bitcoiners, building businesses, and earning Bitcoin. Because owning Bitcoin is one thing, but it's going to run out. If you want to set yourself up for the future, you have to be earning Bitcoin. So that's the second one, is building businesses and earning Bitcoin. We actually already fired up one venture that's going to launch in 3 days from now. Within this group, it happened in a couple weeks. So it's pretty fucking exciting, honestly. And the third part there is the network aspect of it. So we have a group chat going. You can share resources. You can ask questions. Everybody has their nostr address in there. Everybody has their Lightning address. So if somebody does help you out, you can send them sats in return for that. And that's what happened with Letha. I helped her a little bit and she sent some sats. That's how the world should work. And so we're already living there. And so if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in being a part of and joining, we do a couple after every YouTube show, or not every one, but 2 or 3 times a week. We do a private show on there talking about this stuff. And so if you're interested in joining that, it's $5 a month. Keep it very, very low, very reasonable for people. But you also have to have some sort of barrier there. Otherwise, it'll just be all spam. If anybody can join, then nobody is there. So $5 a month, you can join for 7 days. I highly encourage you to do it. It's pretty cool. It's a great time. I saw some messages in the chat during the show. So anyways, that's the plug for the day. Hour and 15 minutes of Q&A. I think we can do a little bit of a plug there. So I hope everybody has the best day of your life. If you are interested in joining, you can click the link in the description. It says Living in the Future tier. Click that and you can join very easily. So with that, I hope you have the best day of your life today. I appreciate everybody in the Zap stream in there, everybody who's been sending sats. I set a new goal today for the Bitcoin Golf Tour. And so that's something I'm going to be talking about in the next couple of weeks. A new plan I had yesterday in the shower, which is where all of my ideas come to life. So if you feel like giving some support over on Zap.stream, it's for the Bitcoin Golf Tour. And we're going to find out more about that in the next couple of weeks. So with that, swap everything on plan B. This, I think so, Bitcoin. Great call, great idea. And that's it. Appreciate you all very much. And we'll see you right back here first thing tomorrow morning, Friday morning. And I did buy some Baileys on the weekend, so the coffee will be spiked. So stay calm, stay cheerful, and we'll see you first thing tomorrow morning.